Good morning. Welcome to episode 63 of the 476ers podcast. We're going to talk about yesterday's Sixers-Toronto game, so stay tuned.
Yo. Yeah. Justice for the blind, just something that'll find in the rhyme that are coming from my mind.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 63 of the 476ers podcast. Obviously, we're going to talk about yesterday's Toronto game, which we won. Let's see here. Am I going to be positive? We're going to spin the wheel. I am going to be positive for right now, and then it's going to get negative, I promise you. I'm sorry ahead of time. So yesterday, yesterday was a great win. That Toronto team, like I said in the last podcast, they're winless. Obviously, they're still winless, but they're winless. They're a prideful team. They got guys who are champions, right? Kyle Lowry's a champion. Pascal's a champion. OG Anunoby was there. Fred VanVleet is a champion. Norman Powell, Norman is a champion. They got a lot of champions on that team, right? They lost Marc Gasol. They lost Serge. Those are big losses for them. Underrated losses. For people to act like they could still be, a top 3 seed after losing what amounts to, while they're older, while Marc and Serge are obviously older, they amount to essentially one excellent center, right? One excellent NBA center. When you look at the end of the game, and you look at their stats combined, they're one very good NBA center. Essentially, there's no drop-off. When you go from Marc to Serge, there's no drop-off. Well, they don't have that anymore. The other thing about that, too, is when you look at previous games against us, one lineup that Nick Nurse used to love to run out there was to run out Marc and Serge together. Why? Because, Ben, obviously, no offensive ability. You put Serge on Ben, and you allow them both to frustrate Joel, essentially. You allow them to frustrate Joel in the paint. I promise you, when we see the Lakers, that's what's going to happen, right? You're going to have AD, you're going to have Marc pretty much trying to frustrate Joe as much as possible. You know what I mean? And now they don't have that option anymore. So, they're running out Pascal and OG Anunoby and whatever. They don't have the big men to contend with Serge anymore. They don't have the point of contact to contend with Joel. They don't have the point of contact, which used to be Marc, which was a wall, right, against Joe. If Joe has enough one-on-one time against Marc, he can probably score on him. But when it's just Joe, enough one-on-one time, but when it's Alex Len and Aaron Baines, well, there's, what are you going to do? There's only so much those two guys can really do to stop Joe. There is nothing they can do to stop Joe. The big difference about today's game was, I mentioned this last year about our defense, the defensive strategy, which was to require Joe to never leave the rim, which allowed his guy to shoot a ton of open three-pointers. And I mentioned that last year, and I said, I don't think that's Joe. I don't think Joe wants that to happen. I feel relatively certain that is our defensive game plan. Well, our game plan changed, and therefore Aaron Baines, who against us has been a notorious fucking sharpshooter, has hit a ton of threes, did not hit any threes against us yesterday, right? I don't think he hit any threes. Let me make sure. The 1 3 that he did hit was called back. 1 for 8. Yeah, 0 for 3. Well, that's a big difference in the past because of our defensive game plan. Now we have Joe chasing him off the defense, making sure he doesn't get any open 3-pointers. So anyway, point is, this team, you see, you could see the intensity of the game. The game was intense. You know what I mean? In the first quarter, not so intense. That was our fault, which I'll talk about in a second. But by the second, third, fourth quarter, well, not even the second quarter, third, fourth quarter, it got intense. The Raptors wanted to win that game. I mean, Pascal fouls out on the intentional foul at the end of the game and essentially walks to the locker room meeting. He doesn't even dap up or anything. He just leaves. He leaves the court because they wanted that win. They needed that win, honestly. 0-3. No one wants to start 0-3. Look, they'll be fine. They're a good team. I think they're going to make trades. They're going to have a trade to make. And actually, I've been talking about this for a while. I think they're a dark horse to trade for James Harden. I don't know what that trade looks like, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about what I think could happen. I think they could be a dark horse to trade for James Harden. Point being, anyway, so the good, Joe, MVP, again, this is MVP, right? Because again, Joe is not scoring just to score right now. You know what I mean? Which is a thing I think that we've seen him do in the past. It's hard to tell. Basketball is such a sport of feel. You know what I mean? Where again, we talked about a million times, especially when we're talking about LeBron, right? It's about like LeBron's history, not now, but in the past, where it's like, yeah, I know you scored 35, but why did I feel like you disappeared down the stretch, or in moments when you were needed, didn't seem like you were available, right? Basketball is a game of feel, more like any other game. Even when it comes to things like, if you play basketball, you know this, and if you watch enough basketball, you know this. The feel of ball movement, where the ball seems to gain this energy as it swings from pass to pass to pass, you can almost guarantee the shot is going to go in. This energy that energy goes from place to place to place, and it hits. Basketball is a game of feel more than any other game, I think, in sports, more than any sports. Basketball is a game of feel to me. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe baseball is, and I just don't know. But to me, basketball is that. So you feel when every time the game seems to be slipping a little bit, here comes Joe. You know what I mean? Here comes Joe. In the first half, he hits the 1 3-pointer. He doesn't really shoot often in the first quarter. He hits that 1-3, but then he's just just willing himself to the free throw line essentially as many times as possible, just being a menace on defense. He finished with 2 steals and 2 blocks, and a ton of other great plays. I mean, the Aaron Baines play obviously gets caught in that pick and roll, recovers, blocks Aaron Baines. Aaron Baines gets the rebound, goes back up and misses because Joe is still there affecting the shot. Obviously, that's not another block, but it's Joe affecting that shot. So essentially, Aaron goes 0 for 2 in that moment, and Joe only gets 1 block. It's almost like he had 2 blocks, right? The 1 steal on another pick and roll where Kyle Lowry tries to thread a pass, and Joe could have been maybe a kickball. I don't know, but it's essentially Joe's defense, which which Joe then steals the ball essentially, but he blows up the pick and roll, right? Just doing everything on defense. Obviously, he almost gets injured. I don't know what happened. I'm assuming that injury was I'm going to go ahead with what I think happened, and who the fuck am I? I think maybe he got a cramp or a Charlie horse, because if you've ever bent in a weird position, if you've ever bent sat on your knees in a weird position long enough, or I don't know how it happens. This has happened to me in the past, where you're kind of in this weird position on your knees, you know what I mean? Maybe doing something freaky. And what happens is you start getting a cramp, in your hamstring. The only reason why I'm assuming that is because it's weird, right? He goes down on one knee. He goes down on both knees, gets one knee up, passes the ball, then rolls over and grabs his hamstring, right? Then he gets up, he walks to the bench, and then as he's walking on his way to the tunnel, he starts hopping on one leg again. And it's just confusing. And then he comes back and he's fine. So I almost wonder if he was getting maybe a hamstring, maybe he was getting a Charlie horse in his hamstring there. I don't know. Based on the face he was making, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was almost a Charlie horse. I don't know. It just seems weird. So anyway, leaves the game, which at that point, I'm impending doom. Credit to Tobi, who I'll give him some credit, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to shit on him in a second. But credit to Tobi, who does during that stretch. It's not just Tobi. During that stretch, Tobi has 2 big layups, and then Seth has a couple big plays. I'll get to Seth in a second. Ultimately, though, it's Joe. I mean, this is MVP level Joe. You know what I mean? Ultimately, he finishes with what? He finishes with 29, 16 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Right now in the season, 5 turnovers, not great. But listen, in the past against this Raptors team, he would finish with like 16 points, maybe 8 rebounds and 5 turnovers. You know what I mean? The turnovers are because of, one, not making quick enough decisions early on. He started doing that in the second half, though, especially. Really started making fast decisions, which I love to see. And, they have, like, that entire Raptors lineup, other than Aaron Baines, who's an okay average center defender, the 4 perimeter guys are all average to elite or above average to elite defenders. I would say that Van Vliet is an above average defender. If he was the only undersized person there, he would be, maybe he'd be even an elite defender. Kyle is obviously an elite defender. Pascal, elite. OG Anunoby, elite defenders. So when they collapse on a double team, they don't make mistakes. You know, over the last couple of games, you saw teams collapse on double teams. They would over collapse, and what would happen is Joe would then be able to swing through, split, and get to the rim. In a lot of the plays, if you watch, especially OG collapsing, OG never over commits. You know, he just never over commits. He's in the right spot. So, you know, they're a pain in the ass. Let's be clear. They're a pain in the ass. To beat down 10, 12 points to them. And when Joe comes back, as soon as Joe comes back, essentially, he's gone for 4 minutes. He comes back. We immediately make a run and tie it. Joe leaves, starts getting shaky. He comes back. We close out the game. You know what I mean? Every time Joe is on the court over the last half of the game, the first quarter, not so much. Over the last half of the game, when Joe is on the court, it's us taking the lead. You know what I mean? It's us outscoring the Raptors the whole way through. Right now, Joe is – right now, if you were voting All-NBA, right, Joe is first-team All-NBA center. Joker, but Joker has a legit argument. Let me tell you something. If you look at Joker's numbers, I don't know if anyone's paying attention out there. He's averaging a triple-double right now. Obviously, it's early. They're winless. They're 0-3. It's early, but he's averaging, I think, like 28, 12, and 11 or something like that for a center, which is fucking absurd. That's an unheard of thing for a center to ever do, except for not even Will. Will averaged 8 assists in his. Now, you know what? The thing is that the way assists have been counted now is different than the way assists were counted back then. Back then, assists were counted in a way that essentially it's I pass you the ball and the ball goes up immediately. Now, assists can be a dribble in 2 steps. You know what I mean? So maybe Will in today's NBA would be averaging a triple-double that way, but either way, that's not the point. Joker has an argument. They're winless though. We're 3-1. When Joe's playing this year, we're 3-0. So yeah, Joe is the guy right now. You know what I mean? Joe is the guy. He deserves MVP votes through the first week of the season without a question. Especially considering if MVP uses a lot of Story. Well, when you're looking at Story, considering the fact that he doesn't play against Cleveland and we get absolutely fucking destroyed, well, that tells you how valuable he is, right? How valuable he is. Our team is trash once Joe is off the court, which has been nothing. I mean, they showed the stats yesterday, 46 and 66 without Joe on the court. And listen, what's important? It's important to know, right? Because when you lose any team that loses a player of that caliber, yeah, it's probably going to have a losing record after that, right? You're going to have a losing record, except that we're relying. You know what? Before I get into that, let's talk about the positive still. Seth. I thought Seth was the second best player last night. People are going to probably scream, well, why? But Tobi had 26. We're going to talk about Tobi. Seth, I thought, was the second best player last night. 17 points, hit the biggest three-pointer of the game. You know, on a fantastic Joe assist. Joe is on the block. He turns baseline. They essentially triple team him, and Joe immediately looks, sees Steph, wings out a perfect pass into the shooting pocket. Steph catches it, shoots it, the biggest pass of the game. I mean, the biggest shot of the game. Seth had a couple dimes. He had in the first half, he had one pass where I guess that was off a screen and roll. He rolls to the corner of the 3-point line where there are 2 people in between him and Tobi in a center, and he puts a bounce pass right in Tobi's breadbasket, and Tobi's able to finish it. Then there is the play out, the behind the back pass, which is the highlight pass. Now, credit to Ben on that. It was a great finish by Ben, someone who has not been finishing a fucking thing. That man, Ben, is on a diet because he don't finish his food at all. You know what I mean? He leaves. So he is a picky eater. He's that person that when you go eat wings, this person does not rip the bone apart on the blades, right? He don't rip the bones apart to get into the meat. He leaves the meat in there. He's not doing it. He don't clean the drum. He don't clean it. He leave meat throughout the bone. He eats half the chicken and then he leaves the other for whatever. He don't finish anything. All right. He's the man who starts binging a TV show and then leaves the last 2 seasons up to chance. He don't even know what's going to happen at the end of the show. He has no idea what's happened to Walter White at this point. He don't know. He ain't finished it. So Seth is the best player. I thought the second best player last night. So some timely scoring. Again, Joe goes out. Tobi has 2 good layups. The other person who scores during that stretch is Seth. Seth, again, hits the biggest three-pointer of the game at the end. That's essentially closes out. My favorite thing about Seth right now is Seth, again, just in control. Doesn't seem to really get too high or too low or too anything. He just seems really steady. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's always been Seth. I mean, I've watched Seth here and there. I know Seth has a chip on his shoulder, and Seth has a little edge to him. Evidence is last year as he was talking shit to Paul George. Paul George cheated on his wife years ago, but anyway, that's the point. Seth has an edge to him that I can appreciate, but also just doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. That's my favorite thing about Seth right now. I thought Seth played excellent yesterday. Seth has low-key been a revelation. He hit that one banging shot on Kyle Lowry, kind of dribbling, blah, 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 step back from the corner fade away, like a 15-foot fader on Kyle. I'm sure Kyle couldn't fucking believe that. You know what I mean? If I was Kyle, I wouldn't fucking, who is this person? Having a PTSD of guarding Steph. Seth got some revenge yesterday. And then Tobi was our third best player. All right, so Tobi did score well. Listen, good job, Tobi. All right, catching and shooting, that makes me happy. Okay, I'm glad you're catching and shooting. I thought you had a couple good layups. You also got blocked. No, I think you got blocked 5 times. Let's look at nifty NBA.com, which has mostly been garbage, but they do have a BA, which is block against. Oh, it's not showing here. It shows on the mobile version. Why would you show it on the mobile version but not show it here? Anyway, I think he had 4 block against, which is 4 times he was blocked. Why? Because Tobi is not explosive. He has no explosion to him. He's unable to explode. If he was behind you could not have him in the military to blow things up because they would not explode. Things would not explode. If you put him in charge of fireworks, they would be the worst fireworks. Nothing would explode in the air. It would be a sad display of fireworks. Him and Ben are the least explosive guys in the NBA. They are not explosive. Just not explosive. We'll talk about Ben in a second. Tobi is not explosive. So he gets blocked a ton of times. I thought he hit 3-pointers good. Listen, that's it. That's the positive. He hit a couple good threes. There's nothing else I can positive say. He had a couple good defensive plays in the third quarter. For the most part, he was fucking abysmal on defense. All right? I don't give a shit what you say, Outline. I don't give a shit what you say, Zoo, although Zoom off. I love you, Mark. Please stay forever. Outline, you can fuck out of here, though. You aren't gonna. I watched the game. You're not gonna fucking tell me that Tobi played great and and the thing is, listen, I wrote notes down. I took notes, but I decided not to bring the notes here because it was getting to the point where I felt like I was becoming a hater, right? Where I'm about to start hating on Tobi. And disclaimer, listen, Tobi is a great person. I love Tobi as a person. He is a better person than basketball player. I think every basketball player would like that to a certain extent, except for Michael Jordan, right? MJ is the only one who doesn't give a fuck. I think most basketball players want to be recognized as a better person than basketball player. You know what I mean? To an extent. Tobi's been great in our community. God bless him. I love Tobi. You know what I mean? And I mentioned this last year that sometimes the contract, obviously you're paying this contract for him to play basketball, but he brings so much to the community that, you know what? In some ways, not on a basketball court, it pays off. What we're talking about here is just the basketball game. So you may hear hyperbole and you may hear me talk wild shit, but it's only talking about basketball, not talking about him as a person. So with that said, you're not going to sit here and tell me Tobi had a good game. Tobi had an okay game. He scored well. Okay, he scored some points. At one point in the first half, he was like 4 for 12 or something. And then in the second half, he closed the gap. He finished 11 for 20. He scored 26 points on 20 shots, which, if you know me, is not my favorite thing. Because in comparison, Joe scored 29 points on 17 shots. That makes me happy. Why? Because he got to the free throw line a ton. Well, Tobi can't get to the free throw line a ton because he's not explosive enough to get to the free throw line. Tobi finished with 2 turnovers. which I think is low. I think some of those some may have been turnovers because of bad passes by him, but they got credited to the other player. There was again, Tobi with the dribbling. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it. As soon as Tobi gets past 3 dribbles, it's now getting shaky. You know what I mean? It is getting shaky. It's like if you what's that? What are those beads? They work off kinetic energy, right? So you pull one and they boop, and then the other one comes and then boop, and then the other one comes and then right, and they'll go on forever because of kinetic energy. Well, Tobi is that if after 3 of those, it explodes, all 5 of them just disperse, and now it's over, and you have to reassemble it. So when he comes off the screen, 1, 2, 3 dribbles, finishes, perfect. 1, 2 dribble pull-up shot, perfect. Love that. I love that pull-up shot, Tobi. I really do. I think that's great. Come off the screen, 1, 2 dribbles, pull up. I love that. Except that once teams realize that Tobi is a terrible passer, they're going to then step up on that, force him to pass it to Joe, which he won't be able to do. He will not be able to get that pass. You're not going to tell me he had a good game. When I'm watching him in the first quarter, he finishes 4 for 8 for 9 points, except that he gives up 2 wide open 3-pointers, possibly a third, which I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. The third one might have been it might have been Ben's fault. It was kind of weird. It was hard to tell that one, so I didn't credit that to him. He gives up 2 wide open 3-pointers, one to OG, one to OG and one to Van Fleet, where Van Fleet, they come down in transition. Van Fleet is Tobi's man. For whatever reason, Tobi wants rebounds. It's clear. Tobi is hunting rebounds. That's what he's doing. He finishes with 11 rebounds, and the reason is because he's hunting them. He's hunting rebounds for whatever reason. We've seen Tobi get into fights, not physical fights, but fighting for rebounds with Ben and with Joe. He fights for rebounds. Why? Because he needs that contract to look okay. Because if he finishes scoring 19 points a game but has 10 rebounds, he averaged a double-double. Maybe that contract is worth it. No, Tobi, we see through that. We don't believe you. You need more motherfucking people. We know what it is. I see it. I'm watching you hunt for rebounds. So you're hunting for rebounds, and every time you're hunting for rebounds, your guy gets an open 3-pointer, and boop. In the third quarter, Pascal gets 2 open 3-pointers on him. No, he gets 1 open 3-pointer. The other 2 are Ben's fault. Pascal scores on Tobi in the first quarter, just a basic, essentially bullies Tobi listen, Pascal's a solid player. He could do that. Fine. Another play where where Tobi falls asleep in front of the rim. They're kind of in transition. They're in transition to slowing down. He's in front of the rim. Pascal is behind him, but for somehow Tobi loses sight. I don't know, just falls asleep. They pass it, and Tobi's like, huh? And Pascal has a wide open lane. Danny is saving on a lot of these plays. If you're watching this game, Danny is saving Tobi on a lot of defensive plays. Because Danny, if you notice, Danny is aggressive to close out everyone. He wants to close out every shot. So when they're swinging the ball, sometimes you're seeing Danny reroute a bunch of times, right? When it's not, maybe that's Danny's fault. Maybe Danny should stop doing that so Tobi knows he needs to rotate to his fucking guy. But whatever, Tobi doesn't rotate to anyone for whatever reason. Not rotating. Danny gets down, blocks Pascal, saves that shot. Otherwise, Tobi would have essentially the points he scored in the first quarter on 4 of 8 shooting. Scored 9 points on 4 of 8. So on 8 shots, he scored 9 points. That's not great. Okay, that's okay. It's not great. This is a different NBA. This isn't the NBA from 20 years ago. This is the NBA where 4 of 8 shooting on mid-range jump shots, on layups and 3-pointers is problematic. If you're Steph and you're 4 for 8, it's fine. You'll probably have 12 points then, right? If you're Tobi, you hit 1 3-pointer, all right, you finish with 9 points. So he hit 2. I don't even know how he scored the 9 points, honestly. I don't know how you scored 9 points on 4 baskets. No, I know how. These are 1 3-pointer, obviously, and 3 field goals. That's not great. 8 possessions to score 9 points. That's not great. Well, in terms of points per possession, it's okay. Except that when a guy like him, who isn't the most efficient, is scoring, it's taking everyone else out the game, right? It's taking everyone else because he tries to score ISO. That's how he scores. He's not really a great catch and shoot 3-pointer shooter, even though he's becoming that now. Like over the last few games, that's not his thing. So you scored 9 shots on 8. You scored 9 points on 8 field goal attempts, right? But then on 4 field goal attempts, scored 8 points. That's problematic. That's not good defense. You're not going to tell me that's good defense. I know better. He had a couple good defensive plays in the third quarter. Most of those defensive plays he did have that were good were because Joe was already there. Because Joe was making the defensive play and Tobi was coming in. Like if you play 2K, play 2K, if you're playing with a big man who has Intimidator on Hall of Fame, which is what Joe has. Now, maybe he has it on Gold. Right? Well, that means that already this person who is being guarded by him is going to be easier to block and strip. And Tobi is just coming in and cleaning that up. That's all he's doing. He's coming and cleaning it up. So, yeah, he played okay defense in the third quarter and in the fourth. He played okay defense. He didn't play good defense. And it still gave up open three-pointers in both the third and fourth. Open three-pointers in the first quarter that was allowing them to pull away from the lead. Why? Because he's hunting rebounds. Don't tell me he had a good game. I don't want to hear it. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear it. He scored well. That's good. We got to 100 points yesterday against a very good defensive team. Toronto isn't the best defensive team in the NBA right now, but they have aspirations to be. You know what I mean? Everything that Kyle's been saying over the last few days is they want to be really fucking impossible to score on defense, and they showed it at times yesterday. We scored 100. We need every one of those baskets from Tobi. So I do appreciate that. But I'm not going to sit here and act like my man played great on both sides of the ball when he did not. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think OG scored his season high against us just now. Let's see if I can pull that up. Let me open this bitch in a new tab here. Let's open this shit. Let's see here. He's averaging 13 points a game. He scored 20 yesterday right here. I mean, you can see pretty much looking at this. You know what I mean? Where's points at? Did I pass it? Yeah, right here. So regular season opener was against the Pelicans. He scored 8 points. He scored 10 points against San Antonio and then scored 20 points against us on 7-11 shooting because he shot mad open three-pointers. You're not going to tell me that he had a good game on both sides of the ball. I'm sorry to tell you. You're not. And I like OG Anunoby, but don't get me wrong. But you're not going to tell me. I wasn't born yesterday. I watch basketball. I know how to watch basketball. All right. I know how basketball works. I know how to watch it, Tobi. You did not play good defense. You need to stop hunting fucking rebounds. You need to stop hunting fucking rebounds. Those are empty. That's bullshit. All right. This is the shit that Russell Westbrook gets accused of. This is the shit that James Harden gets accused of. Guys who are just standing by the lane, doing nothing as their guys are getting off open jump shots because you're hunting for rebounds. Stop that. Stop. Tobi, stop, man. No stats you put up will ever equal your contract. Let that go if that's what you're trying to play at. You'll never equal your contract. I am sorry to tell you. Okay? That is that. Ben, bro, what are you doing? What are you doing? Here's another. You know what? He doesn't hunt rebounds like Tobi actually does. I'll be real. He doesn't hunt rebounds. He actually grabs some good rebounds in traffic. So I'm not even going to shit on Ben's rebounding. Ben rebounded well yesterday. He finished with 12 rebounds, I think it was. Let's see, 11 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists. How many turnovers did he have? No, why are you doing that? Let's come over here. Ben finished with 3 turnovers. Which that I don't know if that Tobi pass, because the stupid Tobi pass, I forgot to finish that. He's dribbling up the court on a fast break. He throws a terrible pass to Ben, which ricochets off Ben's hands out of bounds because it's way too high. I don't know whose turnover that went to. That is Tobi's turnover. It's a bad pass. It's a bad decision in the first place to take off with that ball. But there's that one stupid fucking Ben who might have been Joe's fault because Ben is out of bounds expecting to give the ball to Joe. It looked like. That's what it looked like, right? So this is that situation where you have a quarterback who's throwing a pass, a timing pass at a receiver, and the receiver is not at the right spot, right? Well, whose interception would that be on? You know what I mean? Is that the quarterback's interception or is that the receiver's interception? Whose fault is that, right? Ben looks like he's expecting Joe to turn. Joe never turns to the ball, so he throws it in between Joe and Tobi or whatever the fuck he's doing. And turnover. The other, he had one of the turnover, both the other turnovers I think are actually on offensive fouls. So you know what, that turnover, that definitely was on Tobi because those other two are on offensive fouls. Terrible driving. The problem with Ben is, again, not explosive, just like Tobi. He doesn't finish and he's not explosive. So not only is his fireworks not exploding, he doesn't finish the wings. This was known coming out of college. People had talked about this. He's uber athletic, right? So this is a little more complicated. This gets a little more deeper. Because while he's athletic, that doesn't mean he's explosive. You're right. You can have someone who is quick, but not fast. And you can have someone who's fast, but not quick. So he's not explosive. That means he can't really blow by his guy. And you see it coming from a mile away. Most offensive fouls, mind you, Kyle is elite at doing this, but most offensive fouls get drawn because that player who is on the move, the offensive player on the move, is not explosive enough to get to the spot before the defender gets it. The defender sees it coming from a mile away, so he's there already. He beats you to the spot and gets the offensive foul drawn on you. Ben doesn't quite have the quickness to get there. Ben is great in the open court, grabbing the rebound and going, great at that. Breakaway speed is fantastic. But the first step is not impressive. No one is impressed with his first step. That's why he doesn't finish effectively. Then the other thing coming out of college was his length. He didn't have elite length. He's just tall. He's not long. Giannis is long. That's why when he gets to the post, he dunks on centers, right? Ben is not long, even though they're the same height. They're almost the same height, but he's not as long. So off the bat, he's not explosive. That means he can't beat his guy off the dribble. He can't get by him to finish, and he's not long. So he has no elite way to finish over defenders. He is not a good finisher. This is a problem right now. This is a problem. Now listen, this happened last year. Ben last year in the first game of the season against the Celtics scored 30. I think he had it was like a weird Ben game. He had like 30 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists. It was like a weird Ben game. To have that many points and then that low rebounds and assists. And then after that, pretty much took off the rest of November. He did not play basketball for the rest of November almost. You know what I mean? He was showing up to the game, but he wasn't playing, I don't think. He was there. No, he did log minutes, but he played terrible. And at that point, that's when all the conversation about who's better, Brandon Ingram or Ben or Brandon Ingram, right? That's why they're always linked. Who's better between them? Because through November and most of December, Ben had left the door open. Then, ended December into January, Ben takes a step up on defense, becomes way more aggressive on defense. Then people are now talking about Ben as an elite defensive player and starts scoring more effectively, starts creating more effectively, more assists, more rate. He starts doing everything better. And people are like, people begin to take the step back. Over the last 6 weeks of the season, before COVID shut everything down, Ben looked elite. Then season stops, go into the bubble. Ben is not playing well before he gets injured. He's already not playing well. And now, again, we're back, not playing well. So I had before my revelation, Shake is continuing his plummet. He did hit a big three-pointer, a pretty relatively big three-pointer. It was the only three-pointer he hit in a game. His passes, I don't know what's going on with him. I guess he's been watching a lot of Carson Wentz tape because his passes are all high. They're sailing. I don't know why. This is basketball, Shake. Why are your passes sailing like this? Why is everyone catching your pass out of position, having to stretch like Armstrong to catch the pass? Why is that happening? I don't know. I don't know why that's happening, Shake. Tyrese back down to earth. Plummeted again, as I've been saying. The Tyrese is so back down to earth. He is the second coming at this point. The way he's come back down to earth, you know what I mean? He is the second coming right now, which would be a good thing, except it's not. That's so sacrilegious. I'm so sorry, Matisse. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. There was silence. You're not supposed to have that long a silence on a. That was what you call a pregnant pause. That pause was so pregnant, it's finna give birth. It's 9 months. It's due. Matisse looks bad. Now he's forcing things. So there's that one play where he drives, where it's almost like a give and go. He gives it up, cuts backdoor. Seth gives him a good pass, and instead of Matisse hitting Mike Scott in the opposite corner, who is wide open. Just a bounce pass, Matisse. You see it, bounce pass to Mike Scott. No, he goes up, contorts his body instead of even trying to draw the foul, right? That's how you draw fouls. You draw fouls by going into someone's body and trying to finish. Maybe you get blocked like Tobi does because Tobi's not explosive. So he's never going to get that call. He's not going to get that call. Tobi and Ben don't get they're not explosive enough to get those calls. Matisse should have passed that to Mike Scott. So now he's pressing to score. Matisse looks, again, no offensive ability. We have two guys in our rotation with no real offensive ability. Ben was going to shoot a three. I'm pretty sure he was going to shoot that one corner three. Based on how he almost double dribbled, right? Because he was intent on shooting, but OG closed out on him for whatever reason. I mean, OG just wants to play defense. OG wakes up defending things. You know what I mean? He's like, he just wakes up. He's just guarding his alarm clock. You know, when he hits the snooze, he blocks it. You know what I mean? That's the OG just wants to play defense. So for whatever reason, closes out on Ben, and Ben then puts the ball back on the floor. You know, so it looks like a hezzy, but it's really not. He was about to pull that, which would have been nice. I would have liked that. Matisse, you got to pass that ball. Right now, you have no offensive ability. You can't finish anything. You can't shoot anything. You're doing nothing for us. Mike Scott, I thought he played okay. It was a minus 14. Listen, the problem with this, you're looking at the plus-minus numbers here. The problem with the plus-minus numbers right here, this is why plus-minus can be a little bit suspect, because Matisse, Dwight, and Mike Scott were in a lineup where the entire bench was in the lineup, essentially. You know what I mean? We need to stop doing that. I think Doc is going to figure that out, because in the fourth quarter, he sat Ben down. He sat Joe down for pretty much 2 minutes and immediately brought him back in because he knew, well, fuck this. Whoa, what? Whoa, Ben, Joe, I'm sorry, get back in there. And Joe came back in. One good thing about Joe, I forgot to mention, beating everyone down court. In Doc Rivers' press conference yesterday, he said, you know, if Joe can do that 5 times a game, then, you know, I don't want him doing it all the time because he'd be exhausted. Listen, Doc, a lot of centers have done this. Hakeem was like very good at beating centers down the court. So was Shaq. Would beat everyone down the court to get early post position. That's just like regular thing that centers do. You know what I mean? It's a thing that centers do. But the credit I will give to Joe is Joe was doing it early and often. Played a lot of minutes. So Joe's conditioning is a lot better. That's my point. Joe's conditioning is a lot better. In the first half, I was concerned because I was in the flashbacks of Joe last year where he's in this full lather, like he just played 48 minutes before this game. You know what I mean? But with that said, by the end, it was no longer a concern. He still finished good. I think he still needs to condition a little bit better, but this is definitely better than previously. You know what I mean? It's just better than he was previously. Conditioning is better. So my revelation, I had a revelation. We almost have to trade for James Harden, as much as I don't want to, because now I'm seeing the problem here. Ben has an upside for sure. Ben has an upside. The problem is not completely Ben's fault. The problem is our team has a very distinct ceiling. And you see that ceiling every single time Joe's on the bench. It doesn't matter who's in the game when Joe's on the bench. Which I want to talk about that because Doc has had, for many years, Doc has been one of Doc's worst attributes is his lineups. That people have been talking about that forever. Terrible lineups. His rotation is trash. Doc, you may want to give it a try looking at having more Ben and Tobi together on the court. To hopefully equal one very good player and more Joe with some of the bench guys on the court to try to mitigate the bench woes. You know what I mean? Maybe we get a lineup of Maxey, Shake. All right, you know, if you want to put a starter in there, Maxey, Shake, Seth, Danny, something like that. You know, like a small ball lineup with Joe playing the 4. I would like to see a lineup like that where Shake and Maxey can create off the dribble. Shake, Danny, and Seth can all shoot. Maxey doesn't look like he can shoot. And, you know, see how that works. I would like to see that lineup, and then you have a lineup or maybe, you know, maybe it's Seth and not Danny, or maybe it's Danny and not Seth, and then you have Seth, Ben, and, probably that makes sense. Have another ball handler with Seth, Ben, and Tobi with Shake, bleeding over into both of these and Dwight Howard, something like that, or go small and put Mike Scott at the 5 in that lineup to have more shooters around Ben. I don't know. You're going to need to stagger these lineups. I don't like this. I don't like this. Even though yesterday was interesting, Joe played almost the whole first quarter and Ben sat first, which is something we've never seen before. Typically, Ben played with Brett's lineups. Ben would play the whole first quarter. Joe would sit, in the first 6 minutes. We play the first 6 minutes and then sit. The point is, we have a clear ceiling with this team, and it's not just Ben's fault. There is a clear ceiling on Ben. It's actually Tobi's fault. And it's not Tobi's fault. Tobi got paid. Do what you think. You got to do your thing. Tobi got paid. He got traded for, and he got paid. Good for you, Tobi. You know what I mean? Good for you. And honestly, whatever. That deal was whatever. You know what I mean? What did we really give up for Tobi? Draft picks, Landry, Landry I like. He's a bench guy. It's not like we gave up a ton for draft picks. It's just that they knew they weren't going to play. They knew they weren't going to pay Tobi, just like every team before it knew. We took the bait. We signed Tobi, and we kept him. There is a clear ceiling here because of Tobi's contract. And that's the problem. We can't move off that contract. We can't. No one's going to trade for that contract, unfortunately. There's just nobody. There's no one. There's no other bad contracts. Unless the Pacers decide they are not going to re-sign Victor Oladipo and say, well, we don't want to lose Victor for nothing. We'll trade you Victor for Tobi straight up. Maybe that could be an option. If they're not going to re-sign Oladipo, maybe that can be an option. You know what I mean? And that would be great. Putting Victor with Ben, I think, raises our ceiling because Victor is a good one-on-one player, can break down the defense, can also catch and shoot. But even though Tobi doesn't really make sense on that team is the problem, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do with his contract. So we have a clear ceiling. We have a very clear, distinct ceiling because of Tobi. It's not completely Ben's fault. And because of that, to get out of that, if you want to raise the ceiling so that on days when Joe doesn't play or when Joe is off the court, James Harden can carry the team. Do I love all the background shit? No. If I'm Doc Rivers, I get on the phone. Daryl, can we talk to James? Can we call James real quick? Get the burner phones. I don't want the NBA to trace it back. So fuck it, whatever. We'll give him a draft pick. Fuck the NBA. James, we want to trade for you, but we got some demands. We got some questions for you. And then we're going to murder you if you don't follow these. That's it. We're going to take your whole family for ransom, and you're dead if you don't listen to these demands. You're going to come here, and we want you moving the ball. We don't want this bullshit that you're doing over here in Houston. We don't want you sitting there dribbling the air out of the ball for 30 seconds out of the 24-second shot clock. We want the ball move. We want ball movement here. Okay? We don't care about you getting assists. Do your thing. We don't care about you shooting. We want some ball movement. We want the offense going through Joe, and we want the offense going through you and Joe equally. Not just you. We want it going through Joe and you equally. We want both of you guys scoring 30 a game. Okay? And if you want to win, you're gonna have to cut this shit out. This nightlife shit that we're all hearing about, that Daryl's here. He told us all about it. This nightlife shit, you're gonna have to cut that shit out to an extent, bro. You're gonna have to cut that in half at least. You're gonna have to cut that in half. And we don't want you coming here influencing Joe. And one thing I noticed, one of the reasons why I feel somewhat comfortable with this is because one thing I noticed watching the game last night, and I watched it again this morning, is that Tobi and Joe seem to have a good relationship. A really good relationship, actually. And to the point where if you watch them on the bench, I see more Joe and Tobi interaction than I see Joe and Ben interaction. And the reason why I mention that is because based on Doc's interview last night after the game, Doc had mentioned how Tobi a couple times demanded on the floor that we get the ball to Joe, essentially telling Ben, get the ball to Joe, right? And that tells me something. You know, we've long suspected that Ben and Joe maybe can't play together. I think that's overrated because Ben and Joe have had a lot of success together. As you bring in all these other players and personalities, things get stretched thin. Well, that's the problem, right? So we brought in Tobi, who is now demanding this of Ben or whatever you want to call it. But we can't get rid of Tobi. He's not an asset to us. So do you try to get rid of Ben for James Harden? And does that mean can Tobi, as a leader, as a voice, hold these guys to some sort of account with Danny Green and Tobi? It's hard when you're not doing shit. Seth is playing well. Maybe he can help. Can these guys with Doc's voice keep Joe in line? We don't listen. I don't know the truth about Joe, right? I'm gonna be clear. I've never heard anything about Joe being out in the nightlife and all that. We've seen Joe be out, but nothing crazy. All these NBA players, all these players enjoy the nightlife, right? To a certain extent, and who doesn't, right? We've never heard that being an issue with Joe. Let's be clear. And now as Joe's becoming a veteran, he's maturing. He looks like he gives a fuck about it less right now. Can we keep Joe in line when James Harden comes here? Is Joe going to stay in line? That's the questions that have to be answered. If you can answer those questions confidently, then the answer is you're going to have to trade for James Harden at this point. And look, this could change. Maybe by February, Ben is back, and I'm like, no, we can't trade. Ben is looking like motherfucking Kawhi on defense again because he's playing okay defense, but he's not the same defender. Weak side right now he's getting crushed off ball. He's getting absolutely crushed off ball. Again, he gave up a bunch of open three-pointers. Half of those three-pointers, the reason why Pascal finished with as many points as he did is because he shot all those open three-pointers while Ben was guarding him. So you're gonna have to do a little bit more, right, on defense. And maybe this can change if Ben defense and then he's finishing better. Who knows? Maybe it can change. But even if it changes, I can't help but think there is a clear ceiling here on Ben's game. There's a clear ceiling on this triumvirate of guys, Joe, Ben, and Tobi. And I think maybe the answer is that you're trading Ben for James Harden. And I don't know what that trade looks like. You know what I mean? If you're trading Ben, you're going to have to keep Tobi because you're going to need a guy, a personality that can, again, just based on what I see, the interactions on the court, again, Tobi and Joe seem to have a very good relationship. So you're going to have to keep Tobi here. You're not going to trade Ben and Tobi. I don't think they would want Tobi's contract, if I'm being honest. I don't think they would want Tobi's contract anyway. It would probably be Ben, Shake, draft picks, maybe even Maxey, hopefully not Maxey, because we need someone who can ball handle. So I would hope Shake, Ben, and draft picks. Shake, Ben, here's 3 picks. Maybe not 3 picks. Here's 2 first-round picks. Unprotected. Give us James. And you run out there with James. You run out there with Tobi. You run out there with Seth. You run out there with Danny. And you run out there with Joe. And that's a championship team, I think, unfortunately. And I don't want to lose Ben. Let me be clear. But watching Ben right now, it's clear to me. And when Joe isn't playing, it's clear to me right now. Ben he is a big liability on offense. And if he's not playing elite level defense, first team all NBA defense, defensive player of the year quality defense, which is hard to maintain. It's easy to score. It's hard to play defense at that level every game. If you're not playing defense at that level, you're a liability right now, Ben. That's a shame. That sucks. That makes me sad. That was my revelation. We have the Magic next. The Magic are 4-0 right now. Some of their wins are, whatever. They beat OKC yesterday, but they're playing well. Listen, the Magic are a great testament to what I always talk about when it comes to continuity. And look, the Magic aren't going to go far. They have a very clear ceiling because they don't have anyone I would consider a superstar on that team. Vucevic is the closest thing, and I don't think he's a superstar. He's an all-star. He's not a superstar basketball player, I'm sorry to say. Markel's playing well this year so far. They got guys. They need Jonathan Isaac. Gives them a lot on defense. But they're 4-0. They did this 2 years ago. In the first month of the season, they were the best team in the East. And then they fucking collapsed. So we'll see. The Magic give us headaches when we play them for whatever reason. We get headaches. They give us splitting migraines. But that's a winnable game. We could lose it. After that, I think we play Charlotte back-to-back. So that's it, everyone. Probably not this week. I think next week, this week's another holiday at the end of the week. Next week, I'll probably start doing a weekly NBA podcast where I talk about the NBA in general. So, obviously you get your Sixers podcast, and then you'll get a bonus NBA episode, like an NBA free-for-all where I talk about everything. As you know, your boy, I'm just a basketball addict. I'm just the addict of basketball. Just all I do. I'm scratching and itching all day about basketball. So Everybody, you know the deal. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Wear a fucking dumb mask. Mask your stupid face. I hate it anyway. Black Lives Matter. Arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. Everyone stay safe out there. See you next time.
Justice for the blind, just something that'll find in the rhyme that are coming from my mind. Used to come